I know I say this every time, but I have a treat for you today. Today, I am conducting an interview with Kevin Rock, who has become my friend through Blushing Phoenix, which used to be called Lean Warrior, if you didn't know that. And Kevin and I connected through just conversation there in regards to erythrophobia and blushing. We actually connected for the first time in regards to, I asked a question on one of the videos. If you are a facial blusher, would you prefer to have neck flushing, chest flushing? And if you are a neck chest flusher, would you prefer to have facial flushing? Because me as a neck chest flusher always felt like it would be so much better to have facial flushing because it's more acceptable, I guess, because it's more understood. And I want to say it, I don't want to quote him directly, but I'm pretty sure he basically called me crazy and said, because he's a facial flusher or facial blusher, and he basically pretty much called me crazy. And because he was like, I would have neck chest flushing any day. So we connected there, and he's just been very instrumental in the Blushing Phoenix channel as a champion of people. I have been able to get other people in contact with him, people who wanted a listening ear. And he is a great guy from Ireland. And so I wanted to get him for an hour and just ask him questions from a male's perspective when it comes to erythrophobia and chronic blushing. So without further ado, actually, you know what I'm going to ask you? Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. And if you like this style of videos where I'm doing interviews, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below. You know all the things. I'll give you a second. And now, without further ado, Kevin Rock, my friends.
Yeah, now
Yes!
I have you.
Yes!
See, I told you I'm terrible with computers. Did I tell you that?
No, but you figured it out, so that's good.
Seriously, I don't know how I done that. I'm no good at this stuff. I'm really not. Look, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. It's nice to just talk to you one-on-one because, like I said to you, like last week, I just really didn't get much time to talk to you, and that was kind of playing on my mind.
No,
Because
that's fine.
I know, but we've kind of been talking on between YouTube and thing over the last couple of weeks, so I just wanted to talk to you more. So it's nice to actually talk to you one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you were willing to meet me for an interview as well, because part of the series that I was doing is I wanted to do 3 interviews, and I had the 2 lined up. And then after I heard you talking, well, you've been huge in the, when it was Lean In Warrior and just recently became Blushing Phoenix. You've been really huge in just putting your voice out there and helping to help just let other people know too. It's not just me, there's other people, and you've been a great champion of the channel. So when I heard you talking in the iBlush meeting last week, I was like, you're great with the dialect of how you express yourself. And I was like, this is the third person that I need to talk to, so that other people can hear from a male perspective also. But yeah, the interview idea has really gone over so well with people because they're connecting to a conversation as opposed to just me talking.
Yeah. I think I don't know if I can only speak for myself here or not, but I think look, I actually like talking about it, like especially to someone that wants to actually listen and hear about it. So it's good to, it's nearly like a therapy in some ways because you're getting it off your chest. And plus, even anytime if I'm ever commenting on your videos, I always look at it from the perspective of, I hope that somebody younger than me reads it and they take something from it. So that's why I've tried to be as open and honest as I can with it, and hopefully it just helps somebody. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because when people are they're looking for information. I know that most people that I've talked to, the reason why they Google or they look at YouTube or Instagram is they're looking for something to connect to that lets them know they're not alone. So not only do they find, for myself, I found pictures specifically for my situation in particular, because mine is chest and neck flushing, where a lot of people it's facial flushing. Or blushing on their face. So when I could find a picture that looked like mine and not just hives or some weird rash, because that's not really what mine is. It's more of like just the splotches. So I could find that, but then I couldn't find, so what did they do? How are they dealing with it? How are they living with it? They're just, what is this? Does anybody know what this is? And so when I created the channel, it was so that people could know life goes on with it.
Yeah.
And maybe we can explore solutions if that's what you're looking for. But one of the big things that I wanted to talk to you about today is that you have gone the path, you and I connected on the path of acceptance and finding who you are despite turning red. Because it's so psychological that people get so trapped in, I can't do anything, or I can't have a job that's successful, and I can't have great relationships because I'm a blusher or a flusher. And your situation, well, what we've connected with a lot in the writing back and forth is just acceptance and being able to move through it anyway.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get there, I have to say. But even see the word erythrophobia, I didn't know what that was this time last year. So like I only found that out from going on your channel, and even that, because it's finally just putting a name on it, and even that just gives you, uh, it makes it easier to accept it, and to because you can put a name on it. When I heard the word erythrophobia, I looked it up and I thought, that's me. That is
Yeah.
me. And like no doctor had ever mentioned that word to me before. I'd never heard it before.
Yeah, it's
So
a
it's
real thing. I didn't know
yeah,
it was a word either. I remember I kept looking at, I was researching something and it talked about the fear of blushing, and then erythrophobia was on there. And I was like, that's exactly what this is. It's a psychological cycle that is not
absolutely.
even about the flushing or the blushing all the time. It's the fear of it happening, which is a whole nother layer of fear
100%.
on top of it.
Yeah, totally. Listen, I know all about it. Yeah.
So I've got a few questions for you, and you've seen the
Sure.
style of the interview. So I'll ask some questions, and if we build off of those questions or go a different direction, that's totally okay. I just have some things to keep us, because I wanted to be able to actually utilize your time well while I have you, but just be flexible and open, and we're just having a conversation here. So
Sure.
just to kind of get you introduced into the channel, I will let everybody know that you are Kevin Rock, which is awesome name, by the way. It sounds like you are some sort of celebrity. And
Yeah.
and we did connect through the YouTube channel, and because you were very vocal in your own journey and joining me, if I would post a video, you would always have something to say that was so encouraging. And people from Lean In Warrior, which is now Blushing Phoenix, has actually reached out to you as well, because they knew they could have and further a conversation with you. So what I just wanted to start off by asking you to tell a little bit about your experience of your first time that you realized you were blushing. Your experience, what happened, how did it affect you in that moment? Did somebody point it out? As far back as you can remember your first time with your blushing.
Yeah. See, to me, it's always been there. So I can't remember a specific very first time, but I do remember the first time that attention was drawn to it, and it was maybe like 11 or 12, and uh, we all the lads, and then the boys were here and the girls were over there, and we were starting to come together even at that age. And look, I would have this fear that if one of the girls even spoke to me, that I was going to blush. And I thought, man, that's just normal things for people. That's just shyness in kids. But then I remember realizing that no, none of my friends were blushing as much as I were, and like people were pointing it out to me, and I was like, oh, I remember even at that age thinking, this actually is a problem. Something's not right here. And when I think back to it now, even then, at such a young age, I used to make excuses. So, like, if I knew that uh, that we were all the lads were going to be going over to the girls for at 6 o'clock, I'd say, "Oh, I have to go home at 5:30." So even then, I was building that barrier and getting myself out of situations. So, like, if I hid away from it for as much as I could for years, obviously you have to go to school, you have to go to work, you have to do things, but I to be honest with you, April, like I really ducked out of getting out of as many things as I possibly could. So like it's always been with me, and it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that like I'm really starting to accept it and just
Mhm.
kind of I look at it completely different.
Yeah. So it's more of kind of that self-awareness of that you're turning red, but other people aren't. Because I did the same thing. When I started to realize it about myself, I became so hyper focused on other people, and I would be like, well, they're
Yeah,
not doing that, so this can't be normal. This is me.
yeah.
And it kind of creates that cycle.
I always had this thing in my head, always that I always felt different to everybody. And I know most people probably say that, but I always felt like everybody was the same and I was different. I always felt that, and I didn't really look at that as a negative thing. I just looked at it as it just is what it is. But I have to say, just I remember going to a hypnotist like about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and I went to him for 8 weeks about my blushing, right? And he said to me, Kevin, you've been coming here for 8 weeks, and I've never seen you blush once. He said, this is in your head. And he opened my eyes. My face does go red, and it does happen, but not as much as I thought it did. And it's the thought of thinking your face is going to go red. That's the problem. It doesn't actually happen as much as what we think it does, although it does happen. It's the thought that's what erythrophobia is, I guess.
Yeah, so that's interesting because in that interview that I just recently did with Laura Sofultaz, her
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
too
yeah,
was that she actually does not blush a lot of the time, but
yeah,
she always calls it like the 2 seconds before. And that
yeah,
really stood out to me because it wasn't so much the blushing, it was the 2 seconds before what she thought was
yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah,
And
when Laura was talking in her interview to you, I was actually talking to Laura. I was like, yeah, I could relate so much to it. I was like, Jesus,
yeah, and
yeah,
it's neat to hear the different perspectives because I didn't know, I had seen her video about the fear of blushing, but I didn't realize until she told me that like 98% of the time she actually doesn't blush. So it's
yeah,
interesting to
yeah,
hear your story too, that even after meeting with a hypnotist, he's saying, I've never seen you blush one time since you've been here.
yeah. And also, I went to counselling last year, and the girl said the same thing to me. About 2 months in, she was like, Kevin says, like, this is actually in your head. She said, look, you haven't blushed. You come here every week and you talk to me and you're not shy and you're very open. And she said, I haven't seen you blush once. And I used to go there hoping that I would blush so she'd see it,
Yeah.
but it just never would happen. Yeah. And it was actually frustrating.
It's like
But,
in the environment where you want it to happen, it's not
yeah,
happening.
the one time you want it to happen. But I think, to be honest, I think for me, it was when I was younger, it was really hard because it definitely happened so much more when I was younger. I mean, it still happens to me today. I don't know if it actually went red, but my face really felt it. But it probably hasn't happened in about a week. Whereas when I was younger, it was continuous all the time. I couldn't speak up in school. I couldn't. It really held me back. I have to say, it controlled my life, and it made me the person I am today, for better or worse, or the situation I'm in. It definitely, there's no doubt about it. I often thought if I wasn't a blusher, I'd probably be a different person altogether. But saying that, I love where I am in my life, and I'm not dissatisfied or anything. So, but I definitely think that my life would have been different had I not been a blusher, 100%.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from different blushers, that especially if they, because there's two forms and I think there's two different types of journeys and I think there's two locations in the journey. And there is the inward kind of spiraling where I can't get out of this, really filled with shame and just no confidence whatsoever. But then there's
Yeah,
this other side of it, because I think we've all been there a little bit, but then there's this other side of it where if you can move through that, you kind of gain this new awareness of who you are besides the blushing. And so you gain a sense of identity, because I've seen people tie themselves to the redness as the identity and they
yeah,
spiral out of that, because if that's all that we are, and we, number one, we don't understand it, number two, we can't control it. So
yeah,
if you're anchored to that, that's no wonder we would spiral a little bit. But I also understand it. But I noticed that when you were in the iBlush meeting last week, that you come off as a very confident person, a very like I guess stable in who you are and secure in who you are. And I think that's what people are drawn to, in confidence of other people. So when
yeah,
we blushers see other blushers who are like, yeah, this happens. Yeah, I still actively deal with this, but here's what I love to do, and here's who I am despite this.
yeah. Well, honestly, April, that side of me has only come out in the last couple of years. Like, really, up until, to tell you the truth, like I stopped drinking when I was 30. I'm 36 now, and up until then, all through my 20s, I was always fighting it. Really trying to I struggled with it. I really did. And then when I stopped drinking after I turned 30, I kind of found myself in a way, even though like I don't really think that people necessarily have to go out and find themselves, but I just seeing a whole other side to my character, that I wasn't trying to suppress it because I was always sober. Not I was always sober, and I was always 100% me going into every situation, and that gave me confidence. And then I always say now, I always say, like, if my face has gone red, I draw attention to it. It's the easiest way because it just kills it. And it's so hard, I know, but once you do it, you just say, actually, I should have done that years ago. I should have always drawn attention to it, and but you can't look back and have regrets either. But
Yeah.
that's what I'd say to a younger person. Don't let it hold you back because you're so much more than just you're blushing. And uh, yeah, it's true though. I know, and it's hard to get that through to a younger person because I've been there, and I used to try and tell myself, don't let it happen tomorrow. I used to wake up in the mornings and say, oh, how many times is going to happen today? And
Mm.
it's horrible. It's a horrible thing to wake up with, and that's the way you start your day. You're worrying before you even get out of bed.
Mm.
So it's a hard thing to live with. So the last couple of years, my life has completely turned around, and I love meeting people now for the first time, and I am very outgoing, and there's a difference between somebody who blushes and somebody who's shy. And people get those two things confused,
Right.
especially people that don't blush. They think that they're the same thing, and they're not. They're completely different.
Yeah, yeah. I think because I say this pretty often is that for people who turn red, it's like the story is written for them. If you don't get a
Mm,
chance to explain it yourself, people automatically assume it's because you're shy or you're
yeah.
upset or you're passionate. There's certain things that create that redness, which is anxiety of some sort. But that's not true for everybody. And the
No.
more awareness that is brought to it and the more research that's done on it, like for myself personally, learning that it's overactive nervous system, learning that it's a trauma response inside of the body, and that your brain and your mind can be freed from something, but your body could still cycle through that. And so I think there's some difference between like the chest, neck flushers and the face blushers, but they're still very intertwined. They're so similar with what's
Absolutely.
causing the reaction, but it's also a very human reaction. It's just that
Mm,
it's visible. So when
yeah.
people
Yeah.
are people who get nervous and sweat, or people who have overactive nervous system and they sweat, for the most part, they can keep it contained. For
Yeah.
example, my husband, his hands used to sweat really bad. So he
Yeah.
hated the idea of having to shake hands with people because he already was socially anxious and he knew his hands were soaking wet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
afraid to reach out and touch because then somebody's going to become
Of
aware.
of course.
Oh,
Yeah.
he did
Uh,
work through it through exposure therapy, but
yeah.
still.
No, no, no. And I actually had that as well. I used to be forever doing this, always doing that. As a child, I always have that memory of always doing that. I was always just afraid that somebody was going to call me out for my face being. I mean, I had school teachers call me out for it, which
Mm,
was, when I look back now, it was like shocking. I mean, I had a teacher really draw attention to it one day in front of everybody. And like when I got a bit older, I remember thinking, Jesus, that was like so wrong what that man that done. He never should have done that. It was
yeah.
really, you know, not just that. I'm not just saying that like pity me, but he shouldn't have done it as an adult. He should have known better.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things about bringing awareness to erythrophobia and blushing and chronic blushers and flushers is that even if I'm in a room at work, this happened at school and at work, I've always been really sensitive to this. If there's a moment that is kind of embarrassing or funny and it's puts the spotlight on one person and you'll hear somebody in that group laughing and say, "Oh my gosh, look at how red you just got."
Yeah,
It
yeah,
makes
yeah,
me it makes me die in the inside. I'm
yeah,
like, "Oh my gosh, they just called it
yeah,
out."
yeah, yeah. It's soul destroying, isn't it?
Oh, and then they just get redder, and then I probably
Yeah,
get red with them because I feel it for them. But you can
yeah.
see the lack of awareness because the people that I've seen do that are not doing that to put that person down. They're
No.
doing it in the moment to be like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
that
yeah,
was so funny. Look at how red you just got,"
yeah,
and then it makes it 20 times worse. And so
yeah.
that is the story for a lot of people. What triggers it is that moment right there.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think the people that usually call it out, that they genuinely don't realize that
Right.
they're killing the other person inside.
Right.
Yeah, like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
They're just
true.
it's something that moment is over and nobody's even thinking about it anymore except the person who turned
Yeah,
red.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that they
yeah,
could still be like, you're 36, I'm 35, and we're still sitting here
yeah.
talking about it years later.
There you go.
So what other alternatives? I know you talked a little bit about this. What other alternatives have you tried when you were trying to, I guess, find healing for the chronic redness or the idea of turning red? I know that you've talked about hypnotism and some counseling. What other things did
Yeah,
you try?
I tried meditation, yoga, and I loved all these things. And I tell you, it's a funny thing, right, April, because I've been doing meditation now for about 4 years. And uh, just before lockdown started, I just said to myself, I wanted to stop the meditation for a little while. Because to tell you the truth, I'm a real morning person, but I was getting up in the mornings at 4 o'clock to do it before I went to work, and the day was just too long. And I stopped doing the meditation. And I'm going to actually go back into it now because I really feel that it's just a great way just to relax my whole mind before, instead of getting up and thinking about the day ahead. Meditation for me just works in the mornings. It just cleared your mind. And yoga, I never thought I'd do yoga. I never in a million years thought I'd do it. I absolutely fell in love with it. It just clears your mind, and it's not the answer, but all these little things just help. I eat healthy. I train. I go training before I go to the gym 5 days a week. So all these things, and just like for me, the alcohol was a big no-no because it just made it worse. Uh, I always felt that after alcohol, the next day the problems were multiplied.
Mm.
So that even though drank all through my 20s, I drank not out of wanting to be social. It wasn't out of wanting to actually have a drink. I was doing it for the wrong reasons. So if my things are now are obviously eat well, train, and meditation. They're the things I love. I tried CBD. It is, it did help. I have to say, it did calm me down in situations, and it made me realize that I can walk into situations without having to be worried all the time. But it's not for me. It's not a long-term solution.
Yeah, I didn't try the CBT or CBD. Is it CBD? Yeah, I was gonna mix up CBD. I didn't try the CBD. I have someone who can distribute it, and I didn't try that. But I did eat a brownie with my brothers one time.
Okay.
And I did not like that at all. It actually made me incredibly anxious and made me trapped, and I felt very trapped in my body.
Yeah, but was that like the actual marijuana? I was
Yeah.
that. Oh yeah, well that's what that's gonna do. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
I know.
a bunch of people told me, not through the channel, just in my life, and they were like,
Yeah, yeah,
that will help you. And I was like, well, you know what, let me try. I hated it so bad. I was like, the verdict is in, don't do that. That's a horrible
yeah.
experience.
Well, I tell you something. Actually, I did smoke weed for I'd say about 4 years, somewhere in my 20s, and like, but again, April, this caused me to be a recluse, and
Mm.
I hid behind it because I used to just go home from work and I had my own apartment and I just sit at home and but it held me back. So I wouldn't recommend that. It
Did
really does.
did it help? It just, because here's what some people told me when I told them I hated the brownie experience. They said, "Well, then you're not an edibles person. You need to smoke." And I hadn't done it. I don't have any available, but I
Yeah,
hadn't done it. But they were telling me, don't rule it out until then. But I'm similar to you. I'm like, well, I'm fine at home. I don't want
yeah,
to
yeah.
chief it up and go out and do speeches at work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I couldn't do that personally. I mean, I know a guy that when I worked in the hotel, he used to smoke it in the morning before he get into work, and I'd be like, oh my God, how can he do that? I couldn't do that. I would just at home in the evenings, and it would
Yeah.
just give me an excuse just to sit in my house on my own, another excuse just to be alone.
Yeah. And
You
so
know,
but the CBD actually did help, but I had heard you say you just didn't want to become dependent on
oh,
something.
it's very expensive, and I have to say it is good for relax. I always found that, just say if I know I'm going to meet you tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and if you're one of the people that I blush around, I'll constantly be thinking about that. And then when I get there, I'm like a bag of nerves, and it's 10 times worse. And I did find that with the CBD that I wasn't having them thoughts before I went into the meeting. Uh,
Yeah.
so it did help, but I just don't think it's the long term
Yeah.
solution. And financially, it's just not. It's just not either. But I can understand if someone wants to try it. I wouldn't knock them.
Right. That's
You know?
what I have experienced with I just started that
Yeah,
propranolol
yeah, yeah, yeah.
medication, and I'm testing it out. And the thing that I liked about it is that it's take as needed, because I don't want to become dependent on something,
Mm,
but I just wanted my brain to just have a time out, because I'm
yeah,
stuck in that loop when I go to work. and when I
yeah,
speak in front of people at work, and whenever I'm talking to my boss. It's triggered whether I want it to be or not. And so I was hoping to find something that'll just calm everything down. And so I could, number
mm,
one, see what it feels like to not have all that running, because I don't know.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that it's been a little bit of an experience, but I did notice, and I'm going to do a new video about this because I think I haven't even posted a video yet about like new updates of it, but trying to change the dosage a little bit, some of the side effects that I noticed. And so it's like for one thing or the other, but what I really like and appreciate about your approach, especially with yoga and meditation and eating healthy and exercise, is that when I went through with my really bad season with anxiety and depression, the first thing that I did once I started coming up out of it was change my diet and start exercising. And
yeah,
immediately, Kevin, it was like something lifted. It just
yeah,
lifted up
totally.
because you're
Yeah,
getting all that chemistry in the body moving again. And then
yeah,
also from a yoga perspective, if you have an overactive nervous system that's contributing, or you have where the mind and the body are doing two different things, yoga brings them back together. And that's what
yeah,
I've experienced with yoga, is that I do think it could reduce some of that redness and the constant triggering, because you're bringing your system back together. So
yeah.
I've seen great results with that as well, even though it didn't get rid of it, but it just made me feel better about it, I guess.
Yeah, it made me actually. I remember the first night I went to a yoga class, and the next day I felt like $1 million. It just felt like great. I was like, I couldn't believe it. It just made me feel better about myself. It was like,
Yeah.
I just loved it. And I never thought I'd do yoga ever. So
Yeah.
I recommend them things now. Even going to counseling. I went to counseling, and like at first I was like, I didn't want to tell anybody. I was a little bit, because there's a bit of a stigma attached to it. And then I
Oh, yeah.
started realizing the results, and all of a sudden I was telling anybody who was willing to listen.
Yeah.
If go and talk to somebody, even if you think you have a great life, just go and talk to somebody. It's always good to talk.
Yeah. I think that
So
that's something that one of the things I've learned from the channel and just from the eye blush group and just being able to have discussions like this is, like you said, it's like a form of therapy. And you're
yeah,
getting to talk, not only to write about it or seek something out on the internet, you're actually getting to have a conversation. And I think that's why the interviews have been such a big hit, is because people are getting
yeah,
to be a part of a conversation. Like you said, you were listening to Laura and you're like, yes, you were talking to
yeah, yeah,
her
yeah,
because you're
yeah,
like, this is my story.
yeah,
Instead of just hearing one person talk about it or one person do research, you're hearing in real time, or what
yeah,
looks like real time when we recorded it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I think that the biggest question that blushers ask is, how do I get rid of this? And what we're doing is changing the conversation from not necessarily how do I get rid of it. I think it's okay to continue to seek out that journey. And that's why people want to do the surgery or they look into those things. For me
Mm,
personally, the surgery is not even something I thought about. The surgery, I would not consider the surgery. It's way too scary to me, and I don't want people cutting my nerves, and I don't want to change whatever's happening in my body. I just want to calm it down a little bit. So what are
yeah.
your thoughts
No,
about surgery?
well, I did look into it because look, I looked into it a couple of years ago when I was really, really feeling terrible about it, and I was literally willing to do anything. And I thought, okay, let me look into the surgery. But to be honest, it was the side effects and a lot of people that got it done, they weren't actually happy with the results, and it's a lot of money. And I thought it was the first time I actually spoke to my mom about my blushing openly, and she said, because it's not a conversation that we could have. And to tell you the truth, I went to counselling because not just because of the facial blushing, because didn't have a relationship with a strong relationship with my family for the last 20 years for different reasons. So, anyways, I sat down with my mom. We talked about the facial blushing, and my mom said that she went through the exact same thing when she was
Wow.
growing up. Yeah, and she said that, and I told her about the patterns that when it comes and goes, and she was like, she went through the exact same thing, and when she got into her 40s, that it just seemed to leave. So I'm kind of hoping that when I get into my 40s, that it just leaves.
I've heard some people comment before and say, I used to deal with this a lot when I was younger, and they're in their 40s or 50s and they're like, but not
Yeah.
anymore.
I kind of feel like, and I don't want to jinx it because I know what it's like. As soon as you say it, then it comes back like 10 times worse. But I kind of feel like I notice in myself that I don't go to work anymore thinking, oh, how long is it going to happen when I go here, or how many times is it going to happen today? And I just have a different perspective on it. So I kind of think I'm coming out the other end of it. I hope I am. I know I'm definitely not as bad as what I used to be. But honestly, I put all that down to doing, being on your channels, going to counselling, all them things. So when I went to the therapist 2 years ago, I was talking to Natalie Adams at the time, and I said to the hypnotist, I said, "Oh, this woman on YouTube is trying to get me to join a Facebook page with blushers," and we were laughing. I was like, "Is she mad or what? Why would I do that?" And now here I am 2 years later, and it's the best thing I ever did. So it's funny, how
Oh
things
man,
work out. Yeah,
it's
but I think you have.
amazing.
Yeah, it really is. But I think you have to be ready for things as well. So I'm sure there's people that have watched your videos and they're actually afraid to comment on. They're afraid to get involved, but they will over time. I know, because I was the same when I looked at Natalie's videos. I was like, I remember looking for ages, thinking I'd be afraid in case somebody that I knew would see
Mm,
what I had to say and stuff like that. So I just think that people have to be ready to make that step, because
right.
it's not an easy thing to do. You're putting yourself out there, like the videos that you make and Natalie makes. They're not easy. They're
Right.
you're exposing yourself, so it's a hard thing.
Absolutely. And that was
Yeah,
the big thing about it being called Lean In Warrior. The whole basis was, I believe, and the reason that I believe I overcame anxiety and depression was because I had to stop running from it and lean into it. And as soon as I let myself just feel all of those scary feelings, because the way the nervous system reacts is it's afraid, it's afraid, it's afraid. But then once it experiences something, it's terrorizing, it's horrible, but then you survive it. And when you
yeah,
survive it, the body chemistry says, I'm okay when I do this. And so then you do
mm,
it again. The interesting thing about people who show up, and that's the big thing about you and I have talked about this through
mm,
just different communications back and forth about showing up to the party, showing up to the social event, even if it's for 10 minutes, just show up
yeah,
there. Because
yeah,
every time you do that, you expose your nervous system, the fight or flight reflexes into this is danger, but I survived it. This is danger, this
yeah,
is danger, but I survived it. And you build a resilience to showing up over and over again. And I think that, going back to why some people don't have it anymore in their 40s and 50s as they get older, because they kept showing up, because their
yeah,
system
yeah, yeah. Totally.
let it go.
Yeah, because to be honest, like I didn't do that showing up as I got out of that as much as I could through my 20s, and maybe if I had have pushed myself out there more, I probably would have been at a better stage with it now. But I've only now in my 30s that I'm starting to push myself out there, and like you were saying, it's when you're going into a situation you're so feared, and then you get there, you expose yourself to it, and it's never what you think it's going to be. Anyways, it's never as bad as what you think it's going to be. And afterwards, you say, why do I keep on doing this to myself? Making yourself worry about something that's not going to happen. And then
Right.
eventually, like you just learn to, you kind of, well, personally, I just get better at it. So like if I know I'm going somewhere and I think I'm going to blush, I'll be like, yeah, but Kev, you've been there 100 times and it doesn't happen anymore. So don't be worrying about it. Just go in and be happy. And I now if I walk into a room where I think I'm going to the place I go to every morning and I always feel like I'm going to blush in that room. So now when I go in, I make a point of just saying good morning to everybody in the room and kind of trying to be the center of attention for a minute or two, just really putting
Yeah.
yourself out there. And then once that happens, then like you realize that everybody's too busy doing their own work and nobody's really that interested in you standing in the middle of the room. So don't be worrying about it. Everybody's kind of caught up doing their own thing. So
Yeah, that's a great idea. Instead of coming in with the fear of, are they going to look at me? Are they going to talk to me? And you just come in and just rip the Band-Aid off and like, hey,
yeah,
everybody, how's it going? Draw
yeah,
attention on your own terms and then
yeah.
release
I could.
it.
Yeah, I done it on Monday morning. I went into an office. There was two girls there. I said, you know what, girls, I love coming in here, seeing you two on Monday morning. You just make me day. And it just kind of broke the ice. Whereas a year ago, I would have went in and just stood there sheepish and afraid to say anything. So
Which
it's
makes it
little,
worse.
yeah, yeah,
It makes it so much worse.
totally,
I love that perspective. I think that'll be really interesting for people because what it is with a lot of the blushing and the shame that surrounds it with the uncertainty is you don't want to be seen and you're out of control is what it is. You have no
yeah,
control over it. So if you walk into the room, let your presence be known with that energy, then you've
yeah,
actually taken control back
yeah,
because of just
yeah,
that action of bringing the attention to yourself instead of waiting on it or trying to avoid it, because that's the whole
yeah,
thing with the leaning in is there's resistance and there's go for it, so you
yeah,
just go
yeah,
for
yeah.
it.
Yeah. But it's I have to say now, saying that it's easier said than done,
Yeah.
and like, yeah, no, really, like I kind of maybe I think I probably got to a stage in my life where I just got fed up, like hiding away from it and trying to fight it all the time, you know. And I think I when I turned 30, everything seemed to change for me because I just went from like just wanting to be on my own and just like doing everything I can to get out of situations to now I need to get out and I need to start. When I 30 was a game changer for me. I remember just thinking to myself, I need to start getting out and just living my life and just doing things, you know, and just kind of because life's going to pass me by if I don't get out and start seeing the world and mixing with people and doing things. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, really, April, I was a completely different person than I am now in my 20s. Completely different. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't be talking that. I just wanted to just go to work, come home, and just lock the door and hide from the world. I was so afraid of my face blushing. If somebody knocked at the door, I'd be hemming and hawing while I answer the door and I don't know who it's going to be and stuff like that. Like, yeah, like really. So,
Yeah, that, you know, it's interesting because I'm 35 and I feel similar. I do feel like once I turn 30, it's like something just let go.
yeah,
It's all
yeah,
that internalizing and am I good enough? And what if I fail? And what if this? And what if that? It just went away. But I
yeah,
spent, my 20s were rough. That's also when I battled anxiety and depression almost to the point of suicide. But I wasn't a blusher back then. I didn't have any flushing issues. I did it every once in a while, but it was justified. It was because I got
mm,
angry. It was because I was passionate about something. It wasn't just because of nothing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's like it manifested later on. So I went through therapy, had my head worked on, and then it was later, and it was triggered because my boss pointed it out. Are you upset?
yeah,
You're turning red. And that was it. And the biggest thing for me was in corporate structure, I need them to see me as perfect so I can continue to climb the ladder. I don't operate that way in any other part of my life, but
yeah, yeah,
there. And
yeah.
so it's almost like feeling enslaved to something and you're putting
Yes,
on this act. And,
yeah,
you know, it's interesting because I believe it was Laura who said in one of her videos that with the ETS surgery, she was talking to her mom about it. And her mom said it will just connect itself to something else. So
yeah,
even if
yeah.
you do that, whatever that is that's happening in your body, it's going to connect to something else,
Yeah, yeah,
which was
so
interesting.
true, so true. Yeah, yeah. No, I never thought about that, but it does make sense, I suppose.
Yeah. So it's like we have to, I think that there's different answers for different people, and only each person has their answer. And that's what I thought was so interesting about hearing you speak to the group and I Blush was that you have tried certain things, alcohol, and there was somebody else, Anthony, I think, who was sharing about the alcohol as well. That's a
That's right.
no for him, kind of stay away from it. But
Yeah.
more of the holistic and the more natural approach, because there are people who that is the approach they want to take. And then there's other people that are like, medicate me, I'll take it, I'll do whatever,
Oh,
or give me surgery, I'll do it.
yeah, yeah. No, look, each of their own, you know, each of their own. But the surgery, honestly, a few years ago, if I had had the money, I probably would have done it because, like, this is gonna sound terrible, but like, I, I used to hate myself because I didn't like, you know, I really did. It was took that big a deal in my head and in my world that like I would have put all my money into anything, surgery. But I didn't care about the side effects or anything. But thank God I never went down that road, and I wouldn't now. It's not for me. I have to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah,
you
it's
know. But
interesting to hear too, like, and I appreciate your honesty because I know Laura was sharing something similar to that where she said that there was this shame period that she needed to go talk about like basically how much she hated herself.
yeah,
And that is something that like for so many people, and especially the adolescents that I know that you've engaged in conversations with people, they're young and they
mm,
have no one to talk to, and
no,
and
yeah,
they're in high school or they're in middle school. And I know that in the iBlush group, there was someone recently, she's a teacher and she's a blusher. And she shared with her class the other day that she is a blusher and something to the effect that it's okay. And if anybody needs someone, if you need some to know that someone understands, it's her. And we just thought about and talked about how life altering that is for young
yeah,
people. She is their teacher, just how we were just saying, a teacher who calls it out and a teacher
yeah,
who brings healing by saying, me too, this happens
yeah,
to me.
yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
bringing that
amazing.
awareness. So
Yeah.
what did you do to get to that point of acceptance? Because like you mentioned this earlier, for so many people, it's so much easier said than done. And what would you suggest to people, or just out of your own journey, whether you have advice or not, but for yourself, how do they get to that place of, I'm going to show up anyway? Because like you said, it's so hard.
Yeah, honestly, like in the end, you just have to believe in yourself and just. I had to internally just tell myself over and over again that this is not who I am, and if people want to judge me, then just let them. You know, who cares? You know, who cares? Really? No, you worry about your face pushing more than anybody else in the world does. People are caught up in their own heads, so just. I know it's easy just to say it, but just keep on pushing yourself out there. Just do little things, you know, even if it's just like staying out with your friends or whatever it is for an extra hour or half an hour or 15 minutes or wherever it is. Spend more time with family, just being around people. Because you don't want to, when you're a blusher, you don't want to be around people. You just want to be on your own. So just push yourself out there, and eventually you'll start to come around and you'll realize that
I love that.
it's
Because
not as
it's,
bad as it's not as bad as what you thought it was, you know. And if it does happen, so what? You know, so what? So what I do is I said to you before, if it's getting bad, I'll just draw attention to it. I'll just say, oh, I feel my face getting real red. That just happens, or just something like that, you know. Just bring attention to it because it just kills it, and it's so much better than somebody saying, why is your face going red? Because that's like crucifying. It's horrible, and I get it. So if you can build up the courage just to say it, just to you bring attention to it, and yeah, it just helps you just put it into perspective. Well, it did for me, anyways.
I love that. I love that it's one of those things too. If you think about your alternatives, you've got be alone and run and hide from it. That's not comfort. And then, or you
No,
show up and be incredibly uncomfortable, because a lot of times you're not going to feel like doing it. You've got to
yeah,
show, it's like the magic happens in the middle of being uncomfortable.
yeah. But you never want to. The thing is, you never want to get out there and do it. You have to. Event from my own experience, eventually I just thought like this is actually not healthy. Not getting out there and not being social. This is actually not healthy. So like you need to do it, and just once you do it, you'll be so glad. You won't be glad probably straight away, but over time you'll be so glad, you know, because it just opens your eyes to a whole other world. Like you've no idea, April. I structured my whole life around trying to do everything where I come into contact with as little people as possible. You know, like I said last week, going shopping 8 o'clock in the morning. I would always do things early. Even when I used to go out with my friends, I used to go out. We'd go out on a Friday or a Saturday night. I'd be at home at 10 o'clock at night. I'd just go home. I'd just go out on a drink as quick as I could. And when I realised everybody else was drunk, I'd just get my jacket and I'd just slip out the door and I'd go home. Yeah, really. Like the drink made me worse. The drink
Mm.
never helped me. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting too how alcohol can affect people, because you have certain people that it makes it worse. And
yeah,
actually, alcohol, I believe it's I can't think of the chemical compound inside of alcohol that makes blushing worse. But what's funny is, like, for me, if I drink alcohol, it depends on the day. Sometimes I'll flush, sometimes I don't. But it
yeah.
takes that edge off of my mind where I don't think about it anymore. And that's where I was like, I got to go talk to my doctor as well, because I wasn't a big drinker until quarantine. Had to, like, and I used to work in addiction treatment, so I know all the signs and triggers, and I'm like, let's just see if I could go 24 to 48 hours just to
Yeah,
make sure. And but
yeah, yeah,
I love the taste. I love high gravity beer. I love
yeah,
tequila. I love the taste of it. And then you get all the effects of it as well. So I have to just keep my eye on it and go, all
yeah,
right, let's
yeah,
just
yeah.
make sure. And then when I got on propranolol, this is the bad thing. I asked the doctor, is this going to be a problem with alcohol? And she's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
no, it's not a problem with alcohol. And then I was like, the fact that I just asked that question is
yeah.
concerning. But but the but even like with the propranolol, one of the things it takes that edge off of it. So the
Mm,
main thing I've realized is when I show up to a work meeting or anything that would normally make me very flushed or nervous, I don't think about it. So it takes the thinking part away,
there
and
you
I
go.
can just focus solely on what's in front of me. And then I'll think about, I'm not thinking about it, and it kind of
Yeah,
freaks
yeah,
me out a little
yeah,
bit,
yeah.
because I've only thought about it for like 5 years. I've never stopped
Yeah,
thinking about it. So that
yeah,
is good, but it's also this other side of it where it can make you a little like slow feeling, because it's slowing everything down. If you're,
Yeah.
high nervous system, it's making everything drop so that
Yeah.
all that.
Well, yeah. I actually found that with the CBD. I remember my boss saying to me one day. Now I have to say though, I wouldn't be like one for getting angry and work anyways. But like he just said to me one day, look, he said, "Kev, you're very relaxed. You're very chilled the last couple of weeks." And I goes, that's just the way I am. We just kind of played it off. But like afterwards, I thought like that's that CBD. He just has you more relaxed. Like
It
usually, like
calms you
he,
down.
yeah, like he'd say, well, okay, you have to go back over here. And like usually, I'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake. But like when I had the CBD, I was like, oh, no problem, I'll go back over.
It's just something about bringing that edge off. And that is that. But also the interesting thing is, I don't know myself like that. I know myself like,
Yeah,
I'm up, I'm going, I've got lots of energy, but it's also exhausting, which is why I went to the doctor, because I sat there and I'm like, I am tired. At the end of the day, when the show is over,
yeah,
I need to be able to go to sleep. I need to be able, so because mine is so much. I don't know if it's the same with facial blushing, but it's my whole system. It's not just a chest and neck flush. It is feeling adrenaline in your body all the time. It's this constant on, like I'm in fight or flight, but I'm not afraid. It's the same feeling you would get from an intense workout, the dopamine and all the experience, the epinephrine
yeah,
after a
yeah, yeah,
workout. I feel it in my
yeah.
body pretty much all the time. Well, your body's not made to be that way all the time.
No, no, definitely not. Definitely
Yeah.
not.
So that was the thing
No.
for me when we talked in the eye blush meeting, and you had to go, and we were continuing the conversation, and I said I love hearing his approach with the things that he's tried, and that also he's decided on this acceptance route on a holistic approach, because I've done that for 9 years with anxiety all the way across. And I think the reason why I'm in a place to be prepared for medication and be able to take it and not feel shame about the medication, because then other people,
Mm.
the same thing, you get on medication, you feel shameful about medication, or you feel
Yeah,
shameful
yeah.
about therapy, like you said. So the things that are there to try to help us make us feel more shame. But I'm in a place now where I feel grateful and I feel ready, and I feel like that the holistic approach is what prepared me to be able to try other things, because I know what good feels like. And then I know my inner workings enough to know if this medication is a good one, if this is not a good one,
Yeah.
and I don't like the long-term idea if it's not needed.
No, yeah. Look, honestly, like when I wake up in the morning now, April, I always say to myself, I'm happy. And that is just such a that it's a little small thing, but like it just kind of it's a million miles away from waking up and thinking, oh God, how long, how many times am I gonna brush today? I wake up now and I'm happy, and I'm just grateful, and I just love that. I just love having that mindset of just being like, I'm just happy and I'm in a good place. So people that are blushers that are watching this, go and do what you have to do. But at the end of the day, you can only ever be yourself and just feel it. There's a John Lennon gave a good quote. I can't remember it now. Sorry, it'll come back to me. But basically, it's like just feel your own pain, and just let it go. And that's the best thing you can do. Because once you feel it, then you felt it. Then
Mm.
let it go, and you can live with it. So
Isn't it interesting that you said you wake up happy, and but before you used to wake up and think, is it going to happen today? How many times is it going to happen today? And that both of those were inside of your own head and were your choice to think,
yeah,
and were your
yeah, yeah,
choice
yeah,
to move through them. That's
yeah.
so
Because
interesting.
like, but isn't it? Because it's like what's this thing about? Like, it's the wherever story you tell yourself. Wherever you tell yourself, you're gonna believe it eventually. So like for years, I would tell myself, "Oh, I'm a blusher, and it's just gonna happen," and blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
it was constantly there. Whereas now I just wake up and it's like, if it happens, it happens.
Right.
I'm happy, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I'm a
I
firm
don't.
believer that where the mind goes, the body follows. And that's why it's so important. For me, it was so important to get my mind in check first, and to go to therapy and work on my
Yeah,
head. And
yeah,
then once I knew we had that stable, I could work on the body, because where the mind
yeah,
goes,
yeah,
the body follows. So even understanding that the body can get stuck, that
yeah.
sometimes, like what my doctor said, I don't believe this is your mind. I believe this is your body. And that was such
Mm.
relief to me, because I'm like, identify where it's triggering from, and then we can start the process there. Are there people, kind of leads me to my next question, and I'll get ready to wrap up with you, Kevin, but
Cool.
around you who that are aware of how hard you suffered with this besides your mother, or have you been very open with it in your family or people around you?
No, only there was one friend that we used to be. I was best man at his wedding like 6 years ago. We used to be really close, but not so close anymore. But I remember telling him 2 years ago that I was going to a hypnotist, and he was like, "Why?" And I told him, I said, "You know the way I'd never said this to him before." I said, "You know the way my face always goes real red," and he was like, "Yeah." And look, that was the first time I'd ever had that conversation. So he was the first person that I ever said it to. And uh, who else? The girl that owns the house that I live in now. I just said it to her one day. I just wanted to. I don't know. I just felt good to say. I just wanted to, because I used to think to myself, she must be looking at me thinking, why does his face always blush? So I thought, fuck, I might as well just have this conversation. So I just said it. Yeah, I know. Like, you know.
Like, let's get
Uh,
this out of the way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But like, but they're the only two people, and then like I have to say, April, going to counselling was the best thing ever. That was the number one out of all the things that going to counselling, like just because it just made me realise that like talking about it is the best thing to do, and that probably
Mm.
goes for every problem that people have in life is just to talk about it, and that's why I always say to people now, people have this tendency, April, to come to me with problems, and look, I don't have all the answers, but like I'm seemingly a good listener, and like I always know what to say to people because they always really during lockdown I had like I actually rang my counsellor and I said, I know I'm not with you anymore. I said, but like people keep on ringing me looking for advice and what do I do? And she was like, well, Kev, just be honest and just help them out as much as you can. But like so I do have I'm one of these people that people seem to turn to, which is nice, I guess. So
Yeah.
I'm after going off the beaten track.
No, no, that's exactly one of the things. Like when somebody reached out to me on Instagram and I sent them
Yeah.
towards you, I was like, you might want to reach out to Kevin. I was
Yeah.
because I don't check my messages all the time, and I only check into, I believe, my YouTube messages like once a week or so.
Yeah.
And they were needing someone to talk to. There was a couple people, and I'm like, you should talk to Kevin. So
Listen,
maybe maybe
April,
that's in your future.
seriously, I'd have this thing, right? And I don't, not even a lot of people know this. I told my counsellor about it. I love just helping random people. I'll tell you another time, but like I've done things for people that like other people that know me would look at me and say, "Why would you do that?" But I just like helping somebody. If I know I can help, not without looking for anything in return. Just like I do have this thing. I know I've got a big heart, like, and I do like to help people. But like I just like that, you know. And I think that's why people that know me feel that they can turn to me if they're looking for. People talk to me about relationship advice, and I'm like, I've never been in a relationship ever. But yeah, I somehow am good at listening to these people and telling them what to do. And they're like, oh yeah, thanks for the advice. I don't know where I get it from, to be honest.
Well, a lot of times people are looking for someone to relate to and someone to hear them. And you're a good listener and you've got a good
Yeah,
energy and a good positive demeanor. And so I think it feels safe. But I also think what's interesting is just kind of getting to know you and how you've been able to process through the blushing and erythrophobia and acceptance. You continuously pour outward. So you
mm,
help people, you listen to people, you share a lot of yourself with people. So it's keeping you outward instead of inward. And I think for a
yeah,
lot of blushers who are in that shame cycle, it's inward. So
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah,
it might contribute to the fact that you are so open and there is an energy of gratitude around you, and you still have that idea of what if I blush or if I do turn red, but it's not stopping you anymore. And so you're not
yeah, yeah,
it's not having happening nearly as often, but it's not like you're sharing, I'm healed, this never happens to me. You took the
yeah.
approach of, but who am I even if this does happen?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. I couldn't have worded that better myself. Well done. Seriously.
So I guess in the conclusion, and my final
Yeah.
question for you would be, when somebody watches this and they're watching this all the way through, in kind of your words, what is something you would want to share with that 12-year-old you or that 20-year-old you or anybody who follows and sees this? What is it that you would want to say to them?
Just don't give up. Always have hope. And it's never as bad as you think it is, even though when it's in the height of it, and it's really, gets you down. Tomorrow's another day, and life goes on, and you will get over it. You have to learn to live with it. But anyways, what I will say is, reach out to me on Instagram if you want, because I'd love to talk to you, male or female, young or old, whatever, and just share my experience. So that's it. Just have hope, you know.
That's amazing. And what I will do is in the comment section or the description section of this, when I post it, I'll put your Instagram handle in there, and so that people can find you and connect with you, because you really do give people attention and space to feel safe. And I know that there's not a lot of people out there like that, or there's people trying to sell a product, or they're trying, and I'm fine with that too. That's business. I'm good with that, but people need to be pointed in the right direction. And I agree with you that so much of my own healing over this journey that I've been on since November, being able to do interviews with people, and you know, I wore a button-down shirt to work the other day. I went and saw the doctor. There's all these different things that I've done in this time period because I've been able to talk openly about it, and I've been able to connect with people like you, Kevin, who have made me feel less alone. And honestly, you're kind of a cool guy. So the more I'm like, but you're cool. That's cool.
Yeah. No, that works both ways, because like, honestly, your videos help me as well to be more open. So thank you so much.
That's
really.
awesome. I think
Seriously.
Thank you. I think we're building a momentum. And even in the iBlush meeting last week, it was after you dropped out of there, Natalie, Anthony, and I were talking, and I just realized, like, I was watching the conversation between you and Natalie at one point, and I was telling them, I said, I look at the people who were just in this group, or who are in this group talking, as normal people. And it makes me feel better about myself to know these are blushers talking to each other that live their lives, that have families, that enjoy different things, that are normal living people, just going about their day. And so when you see it, I was actually inspired to be connected to such a cool group, because if I didn't have this going on with me, I would never have met you guys.
Yeah, well, that works all around. But I was the same, because I was like, they were just afterwards, the next day I was thinking, like, that was actually great, you know, that's it, that Zoom meeting was just great. I was like, I kind of wish I had done that 2 years ago when I thought, you know, but I didn't, but it was great, I have to say. So
yeah,
I look forward to the next one.
You were like a unicorn. I was like, Kevin's in here, because we didn't know if you would show up or not because of the whole Facebook thing. And then you were there. And so, but yeah, I was just kind of observing, because I like, if I'm going to watch or be a part of those groups, I had hosted one time. So I was very vocal in that. But for the most part, I just like to take it in. I just love to hear the interaction, see the real people on the screen, and know these are real people that are dealing with the same thing, and how much we've created in our head that we're alone. And then you hear them talk about their lives, and there's a couple people that play in bands, and they show up anyway, and they blush or flush, and they still rock out in a band that they're in. And you hear the courage that people put forth, and you're like, I am so inspired by this.
That would definitely, and it's how much that, like, I was actually shocked. Especially, I didn't get to talk to Anthony that much last week, but with Natalie and what's the other guy's name? Laura. I was shocked at how much I had in common with them two. Just listening to them, I was like, wow, it's actually unbelievable. So actually, to be honest, I kind of hope a few more men join it, just to get a men's perspective, you know?
Yeah. And it's good to hear, because I think for women deal with different shame factors than men do. And I think that's what Natalie pointed out last week, was about men want to appear tough and brave.
Definitely.
And women don't want to look weak. We want to appear beautiful. We want to have all these different things. And what happens in our minds, and what Natalie calls it, is calling out the mind. And when you put that on display and you share that with a group of people, and like you said, you're like, hey, that happens to me too. That's not just me. And it makes it more normal. It makes it more, it's easier to digest when you know you're not, we're all looking to be accepted somewhere.
Exactly. 100%.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I know it's late for you. I've still got sunshine out my window.
Lucky you.
Yeah, it's like I'm just getting my evening started. So thank you for taking the time to spend your evening doing an hour with me.
No problem at all.
Awesome.
Absolute pleasure, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. And when I get this posted, or what I'll do is I'll get it turned into an MP4 file. I'll share the file with you in a Google Drive to your email, so you'll have access to it as well for whatever you'd like to use it for in the future.
Yeah,
And I'll
cool.
make sure that people can find you when I get it posted, and it'll be up in a couple of days.
Happy days. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Have a great evening, Kevin.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
See ya. There you have it. Was that not awesome? He's such a fun person and just such a great guy who exuberates gratitude and joy. And he deals with erythrophobia and blushing. He has worked his way through acceptance and holistic approaches and carrying on with his life and being able to pour out regardless of what internally was going on. And as we pointed out in the video, I wonder, and I'm curious to know if part of him being so outward focused is what has helped him get to that place of radical acceptance. Because when I was going through depression really badly, I remember a mentor said to me, a lot of times when you're majorly depressed, if you will get your focus off of you and onto other people, then it will help break that bondage of depression. And so if you serve, if you give, if you think of other people's birthdays or things that you could do for somebody else, it gets that hypersensitive me focus off of you and onto other people, and it breaks that cycle. So I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Kevin Rock. And again, Kevin, thank you so much for spending your time here, sharing all the ins and outs of your story. And if you guys are interested in connecting with Kevin, I will link his information in the description box below. Be sure to go check him out, add him as a friend on Instagram, say hi to him. And who knows, maybe in the future, Kevin will start creating his own videos. And if you'd like to see that, be sure to leave that in the comments below. If you want to connect with Kevin, leave that in the comments below as well. He's always around saying hi and sharing some of his story, but be sure you go check out his Instagram and connect with him there. All right, my friends, until next time, I'll see you in my next video.